By dawn, that single dance would be
Evening.
remembered
Thanks
as
for
the
the prompt
moment her
service.
life
Of
split in
course,
two.
enjoy.
The nightclub was built for excess. Gold-veined marble floors, glass chandeliers pulsing softly with bass, men who smiled like money never scared them and women who laughed too loudly to prove the same. She stood behind the velvet rope of the crowd, pretending to enjoy the music while counting reflections in mirrored walls. She had learned how to watch without being obvious long before tonight, long before fear learned her name. Every time she turned her head, the same figure appeared just beyond her shoulder, not close enough to touch, not far enough to disappear. He didn't dance. He didn't drink. He didn't blink when people passed between them. He only watched, patient like something waiting to collect. She tried moving toward the bar. He followed. She changed directions. He adjusted. She told herself not to panic, because panic is loud, and loud gets you noticed. That's when she saw him, sitting alone near the back, away from the lights, a man so still he looked carved rather than relaxed. No phone. No drink. No smile, just a black suit that absorbed the glow around it and eyes that tracked the room like they already owned it. She didn't know why her feet moved before her mind agreed, but they did. She crossed the floor like she belonged there, heart pounding in her ears, the music suddenly too loud, too fast. She stopped in front of him. He looked up once, slowly, as if time bent for him alone. She swallowed and leaned close enough for him to hear her over the music. Could you dance with me? Her voice didn't shake until the second sentence. There's a man watching me. He didn't ask which one. He didn't look past her. He simply stood. The people around them felt it immediately. The shift, the quiet pressure when something dangerous wakes up. He placed one hand at her waist, firm but careful, as if testing a promise rather than claiming it. She flinched before she could stop herself. Then they were moving. The music softened somehow, as if the club itself leaned in. She tried to keep her breathing steady, pretending this was normal, pretending she hadn't just grabbed onto the first stranger who felt like a wall instead of a door. He guided her easily, not dancing so much as controlling space, turning her just enough to change her line of sight. That's when she saw him again, the watcher, the stalker, only now he wasn't advancing. He wasn't smiling. He was frozen, half hidden behind a column, eyes locked not on her, but on the man holding her. The man's face drained of color. He took a step back, then another. She felt it before she understood it, the way fear travels differently when it changes direction. She whispered, he's backing away. The man at her waist didn't answer, his grip tightened just enough to let her know he noticed too. He leaned down, voice calm, almost bored. Good, he said. The stalker turned fully this time, shoulders tense, calculating exits that suddenly no longer belonged to him. A large hand appeared on the stalker's shoulder from nowhere. The man didn't scream. He didn't fight, he simply vanished into the crowd like a rumor swallowed whole. She stopped dancing, her pulse roared in her ears. She looked up at the stranger holding her, and for the first time she realized the club wasn't watching her anymore, they were watching him. He lowered his head slightly so only she could hear. You didn't ask me to dance because you were brave, he said, you asked because you were desperate. Her mouth opened, she didn't deny it, she couldn't. He released her waist slowly, as if letting go cost something, then his eyes met hers fully, sharp and unreadable. Now tell me, he continued, how long he's been following you. The music surged back, the lights flared, the club breathed again, but she knew something irreversible had already happened, because the man who scared her was gone, and the man holding her attention now was far more dangerous. The man didn't let go of her immediately. He kept dancing, slow and deliberate, as if the floor itself belonged to him and everyone else was only borrowing space. Her body followed before her thoughts could catch up, not because he forced her, but because resistance suddenly felt pointless. The music pulsed lower, heavier, and she realized the club had changed rhythm around them. People weren't just dancing anymore. They were watching, not obviously, not openly, but the way shoulders angled, the way conversations dipped and died when he turned. Something was happening she didn't understand yet. She glanced around and noticed the first thing that made her stomach tighten, the exits. The men near them weren't dressed alike, but they moved with the same discipline. One leaned casually against the bar, hand resting too naturally at his side. Another drifted closer to the DJ booth, eyes scanning reflections instead of faces. They weren't security in the normal sense, they were something quieter, more practiced. She whispered, who are they? He didn't look down at her. They're making sure no one interrupts us. Her breath caught. She should have pulled away. She should have said thank you and left, but she didn't feel chased anymore. She felt seen, and somehow that was worse. He guided her in a slow turn, placing her back toward the center of the room, shielding her without making it obvious. The watcher was gone, but the memory of being hunted still crawled under her skin. She felt exposed in a different way now, like standing under a spotlight she hadn't asked for. You didn't scream, he said casually. Most people do. I didn't think it would help, she replied before thinking. He hummed softly, almost approving. The bass thudded through her ribs. She became painfully aware of how close they were, how steady his breathing was compared to hers, how everyone else seemed louder and smaller at the same time. A sharp click echoed through the room. It was subtle, but she heard it. The doors. She turned her head just as the heavy double doors at the front slid shut, locks engaging with a muted finality. The music didn't stop. The DJ didn't react, but the air changed, thick with something unspoken. People noticed now. Whispers spread like spilled liquor. She stiffened. Did you just lock the club? He smiled faintly. Not warmth, not humor, control. For privacy, he said. We don't need an audience for this part. Her heart slammed. This part of what? He guided her closer, his hand firm at her back now, not threatening but absolute. The truth, he replied. She swallowed hard. I just needed help. And you got it, he said, but help always costs something. She searched his face for anger, for judgment, for the kind of reaction she'd learned to fear. There was none, just focus, the kind of attention that doesn't blink. He leaned slightly so his words brushed her ear. How long has he been following you? Her throat tightened, images flashed through her mind, late-night walks, reflections in windows, footsteps that stopped when she stopped. She hesitated, and in that pause she felt the room lean in. He noticed immediately. That hesitation, he said quietly, means it's not new. She exhaled shakily. A few weeks. His jaw tightened just enough to notice. Names? I don't know. Contacts? No messages? She nodded once, his hand stilled at her waist. Show me. She reached into her bag with fingers that wouldn't quite cooperate, aware of eyes everywhere, aware that the club felt smaller by the second. She handed him her phone. He glanced at the screen once, then passed it to one of the men who had appeared silently at his shoulder. The man vanished just as quickly. The boss's attention never left her. You did the right thing, he said, by choosing me. That wasn't comfort. It was a statement. She felt a strange chill despite the heat of the room. What happens now? He leaned back slightly, studying her like a problem already halfway solved. Now, he said calmly, we find out why someone thought they could touch what's under my protection. The music swelled again, the doors stayed locked, and she realized with a sinking certainty that whatever she'd stepped into tonight, there was no walking back out the same way. She hadn't been looking for protection, she hadn't been looking for power or rescue or a savior. She'd been looking for one quiet minute where her pulse didn't feel like it was being hunted. That was why she'd chosen him, not because he looked dangerous but because he looked still. In a room full of noise and hunger and desperate eyes, he sat like nothing in the world needed his attention. That kind of calm felt safe to someone who had learned the hard way how predators moved. She stayed close as the music slowed again, his hand steady at her waist, not gripping, not demanding, just present. Her thoughts finally caught up to her body and they weren't kind. Why him? Why tonight? Why a stranger? She swallowed and forced herself to speak before fear rewrote the moment. I didn't know who you were, she said quietly. He didn't answer right away. She kept going, words spilling now that the seal had broken. I just knew he wouldn't follow me onto the floor, not to you. I thought if I stood next to someone who looked like he belonged, he'd back off. His gaze softened in a way that wasn't mercy but interest. How long has it been happening? Long enough to stop calling it coincidence, she replied, long enough that my friends stopped believing me. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. People don't take fear seriously when it doesn't leave bruises. He nodded slightly, as if filing the information away. So you picked a stranger. I picked a shadow, she corrected. Shadows don't ask questions. That earned the smallest curve of a smile. She shifted her weight and glanced toward the edge of the dance floor. That was when she saw him point. One of the men standing near the bar wasn't watching the crowd. He was watching her reflection in the mirror behind the shelves. His posture was wrong, not club security, wrong for a bodyguard too. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't recognition at first. It was memory. A flash of concrete, a hallway that smelled like bleach, voices raised in a language she didn't understand yet. Her breath hitched, her fingers curled unconsciously into the fabric of the man's jacket. What is it? He asked, voice low. That man, she whispered without looking, by the bar. His body didn't tense, but the space around them did. One of his men shifted instantly, blocking her line of sight. You know him? It wasn't a question, she hesitated too long. That was answer enough. I've seen him before, she said finally. Not here, not like this. Her chest tightened as the memory sharpened. A night she never reported, a place she never returned to. A moment when she learned how fast safety could disappear when the wrong people decided you were convenient. Where? He pressed. A long time ago, she said. I don't talk about it. He studied her face like he was weighing something heavier than curiosity. But you recognized him? She nodded once. And that's not normal, he said. Not for a waitress, not for a random girl asking strangers to dance. Her pulse raced. She felt exposed in a way the stalker had never managed. I told you, she said. I didn't know who you were. I believe you, he replied. That's why this is a problem. The music faded into something distant. She felt the room closen again, not with danger this time but with consequence. Her phone vibrated in her hand. She hadn't realized she was still holding it until the screen lit up. No name, no number, just words that made her blood run cold. You just made a very bad choice. Her face drained of color. He noticed instantly. Who sent that? She held the phone up with shaking fingers. He read the message once, then looked at her with something new in his eyes. Not anger, not fear, decision. You didn't choose me by accident, he said quietly, and whoever's been watching you just realized that too. The club lights pulsed overhead, the doors remained locked, and she understood then that dancing with him hadn't been the dangerous part. The dangerous part was being seen standing at his side. The smile didn't disappear all at once. It thinned first, like something being folded away carefully, then it vanished completely and the man she was dancing with became someone else entirely. The music was still playing, the lights were still pulsing, but the room no longer belonged to the club. It belonged to him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't stop moving. His hand stayed at her waist as if nothing had changed, as if this was still just a dance. Stay with me, he said quietly, not a request. She felt it immediately, the shift, the way bodies adjusted around them without looking, the way men she hadn't noticed before angled themselves between her and the exits, between her and the bar, between her and the mirrors. His thumb brushed once against her side. A signal. She didn't know how she knew that, she just did. A man near the DJ booth nodded almost imperceptibly. Another touched his ear. A third stepped toward the back hallway with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew no one would stop him. The stalker by the bar finally realized something was wrong. She saw it in his eyes, the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his gaze darted toward the door and then froze because it was no longer an option. He tried to move anyway. He made it 2 steps before hands closed around his arms. No shouting. No struggle. No scene. The music swallowed any sound that escaped him. She watched as he was guided, not dragged yet, toward a side corridor that staff weren't supposed to use. His feet resisted only when he saw who was waiting there. Then he panicked, then he was dragged. Her breath caught. What are you doing? She whispered. He didn't look at her when he answered, confirming. They reached the edge of the dance floor. He steered her slightly aside, placing her where she could see without being seen. A wall-mounted screen near the hallway flickered to life. She hadn't noticed it before. A security feed. The angle was wrong for customers but perfect for someone who wanted control. The image showed the corridor, the stalker shoved against the wall. His face was pale now. Sweat darkened his collar. He spoke rapidly in Korean. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone, begging disguised as explanation. The man beside her finally turned to look at the screen. His face was empty, not cruel, not satisfied, just focused. Who sent you? He asked calmly. The stalker laughed once, high and hysterical. I don't know her, he said in broken English, gesturing wildly. I was just watching. She paid me. The man's eyes flicked to her reflection in the dark glass. He's lying, she said before thinking. She hated that she was sure. How do you know? Because he wouldn't have texted me if he didn't know who I was. That earned a glance from him, sharp now. You didn't mention the messages earlier. I didn't think I'd live long enough for it to matter. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He said something in Korean. The stalker's laughter stopped abruptly. One of the men off-screen struck him. Not hard, not for pain, for silence. He's not the one, the man beside her said quietly. Not alone. The words settled heavily between them. She wrapped her arms around herself without realizing it. What does that mean? He leaned closer, his voice for her alone now. It means someone put him here on purpose. It means someone knew you'd be here. It means this wasn't a stalker problem. Her heart pounded. Then what was it? A test, he replied, or a message. On the screen, the stalker sagged, defeated. Someone whispered into the man's ear. He nodded once, then reached out and took her wrist gently but firmly. "We're leaving," he said. "Now?" "Now." The music surged again as if nothing had happened. The dance floor filled back in. The club breathed out, unaware. She took one last look at the screen before it went dark. The stalker was still alive, but she understood something terrifying then. That was mercy, and mercy meant there was more to come. As they moved toward a private exit, he leaned down and spoke so softly only she could hear. "He's not alone," he repeated. "And neither are you anymore." The car door closed with a sound that felt final, not loud, not violent, just absolute. She reached for the handle out of instinct and found it locked before her fingers even touched it. He noticed. He always noticed. "Don't," he said calmly from beside her. She turned on him, anger cutting through the fear. "You can't just take me," she snapped. "I asked you to dance, not to kidnap me." The car slid smoothly into traffic, engines flanking them like shadows. The city outside blurred behind tinted glass, neon smeared into colorless streaks. She had lived here long enough to know these streets, yet from inside this car everything felt unfamiliar. He didn't answer right away. He watched the side mirror instead, his gaze calculating, as if the night itself were a chessboard. "If I wanted to kidnap you," he said finally, "you wouldn't be arguing with me." That didn't make her feel better. "Then let me out." No, one word, controlled, absolute. The driver didn't look back. She leaned forward, voice sharper now. "You dragged a man out of a club, you locked the doors. You're acting like this is normal." He turned to her then, eyes dark but steady. "It is." The truth of that landed harder than any threat. She crossed her arms, pressing herself into the seat. "You said he wasn't alone," she said. "You said someone followed me here." "Yes." "Then why am I the one trapped in your car?" His expression softened slightly but not enough to be kind. "Because whoever sent him expected you to run. They expected panic, they expected noise." The car took a turn she didn't recognize, and instead you came to me." She swallowed. "I didn't know who you were." "That's the only reason you're still alive." The words were delivered without pride, without menace. As if they were simply facts. The car slowed as they entered a private underground garage. Concrete swallowed the sound of the city. The doors rolled shut behind them, cutting off the world completely. She felt it then, the shift, that same invisible line she'd crossed in the club. This time there was no music to disguise it. "You're not taking me home," she said quietly. "No, where are we going?" "Somewhere you can breathe." The engine cut off, silence rushed in, thick and heavy. She reached for the door again. This time his hand closed gently around her wrist, not painful, not tight, but immovable. "Listen to me," he said. "You asked me to dance because you knew you were being hunted. You chose the most dangerous man in the room because you thought danger would scare him away." Her chest tightened because he was right. "That worked," he continued, "but it also told someone watching that you were important enough to protect." "I didn't ask for this." "No," he agreed, "you didn't." He released her wrist and stepped out of the car, then paused. "But now you have it." Men appeared from the shadows of the garage, quiet and efficient. One opened her door. She hesitated, heart hammering. "If I walk out," she said, "do I ever get to leave?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering, "Not tonight." She stepped out anyway. The air was cool, sterile, smelling faintly of concrete and oil. She followed him through a secured elevator and into a space that didn't feel like a home so much as a fortress. Clean lines, low light, silence with purpose. He spoke to his men in Korean, quick and sharp. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the result. They moved farther away from her. "Not closer." No one touched her. No one looked at her too long. "No one lets her leave," he said at last, voice carrying through the room under any circumstances. That was when fear finally settled in her bones, not the loud kind, the quiet kind that knew this was real. She opened her mouth to argue again when one of the men returned, expression tight. "Boss," he said carefully, "the driver didn't check in." The room stilled. He didn't react right away, but she felt it, the tension tightening, reshaping. "Call him," he said. The man swallowed. "His phone is off." For the first time since the club, the man beside her looked genuinely displeased. He turned slowly back to her, eyes unreadable. "It seems," he said softly, "that the night isn't finished with us yet." The screens came alive one by one, security feeds blooming across the far wall like open eyes. The club, the street outside, the alley where the stalker had been dragged from the dark. She stood behind him now, arms wrapped around herself, watching pieces move that she hadn't known existed. He didn't invite her closer. He didn't send her away. He simply allowed her to see. That felt deliberate. He followed you for 3 weeks, one of the men said quietly, scrolling through footage. She flinched. I felt it. She whispered, but I never saw him that close before tonight. Because tonight wasn't about watching, the man replied, it was about timing. The footage paused on the moment she had stepped onto the dance floor. The angle widened. Another man appeared at the edge of the frame. Not the stalker. This one wore a cap, kept his head down. Zoom, the boss said. The image sharpened. The man lifted his phone just enough to capture her face, his hand. She swallowed hard. That wasn't him, she said. That wasn't the one who followed me. No, the boss agreed. That was the witness. The words sank into the room like weight. She turned to him slowly. Witness to what? He didn't answer right away. He studied the screen, then gestured for another feed. The camera switched to the garage entrance. The timestamp ticked backward. The driver's car idled for 6 seconds longer than necessary before pulling away. That pause, he said, was the signal. Her pulse spiked. Signal for who? He finally looked at her. Then his expression was calm, but something sharp lived beneath it. For the stalker to approach you, for the camera to record you, for the room to notice. She shook her head, breath unsteady. You're saying they wanted me scared enough to go to you? Yes. And they wanted it seen. Silence stretched. She felt suddenly exposed, like every instinct she'd trusted had been used against her. Why? She asked. Why me? He leaned back slightly, arms crossing. Because you don't belong in my world, he said, and now you're in it publicly. One of the men cleared his throat. Boss, we traced the payment for the stalker. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. Source? Encrypted but familiar. The man hesitated. It passed through one of our holding accounts. The air changed. She felt it before anyone spoke. He didn't explode. He didn't curse. He simply went still. That scared her more than anger ever could. Inside, he said softly. She looked between them. Inside your organization? He nodded once. Someone close enough to touch my money. Her voice dropped. Then this wasn't about me at all. Not at first, he said. You were the lever. She took a step back, heart racing. So the stalker was just bait. Yes. And the dance? He met her gaze steadily. The invitation. She laughed once, sharp and hollow. I didn't even want to dance. That's why it worked. Another screen lit up. A message thread scattered photos. The clearest one showed her and him on the dance floor, his hand on her back, her face turned up toward his. They already sent it, one of the men said. It's circulating. She stared at the image. It looked intimate. It looked deliberate. It looked dangerous. They wanted you seen with me, he said quietly. They wanted rumors. They wanted questions. About what? She asked. About why I'd protect a woman like you. Her stomach twisted. And why would that matter? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because anything I protect becomes leverage. The truth of that hit her harder than the stalker ever had. So what happens now? She asked. Now, he said, whoever arranged this thinks I'll hesitate. She swallowed. Will you? He studied her face like he was weighing something that had no right answer. That depends, he said, on whether you want to disappear, or stand where everyone can see you. She opened her mouth to respond when a phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the message once, then set it down face down. They've made their move, he said calmly, and now they're waiting to see what I do next. By the time the sun thought about rising, her face was already everywhere, not famous in the way people dream about, but traded, measured, zoomed in and circled like a mistake someone wanted to cash in on. The first time she saw it was on one of the monitors, a cropped image pulled from the dance floor footage, her profile caught mid-breath, his hand unmistakable at her back. She didn't recognize herself in it. She looked braver than she felt, stronger than she was. Then the screen refreshed and there were more, from outside the club, from the street, from a security camera she didn't know existed. Each angle told the same lie, that she belonged there, that she had chosen this. The men around him stopped pretending it was contained. Voices dropped, calls were answered and ended without pleasantries. The city was waking up and already reacting. She felt it in the way the room tightened, like the walls were leaning in to listen. They're moving fast, someone said. Too fast, another replied. It's deliberate. She wrapped her arms around herself again, not for warmth but for grounding, like if she let go she might float out of her own body. She looked at him. He was standing still, phone in hand, expression unreadable, but something old and heavy sat behind his eyes. They're not just sharing it, she said quietly, they're framing it. He nodded once. They're telling a story. About me. About us, he corrected, and that single word landed harder than any threat. She shook her head. There is no us. To them, he said, there is. A new feed popped up, not video, this one was text, white characters on a black background, passed through enough hands to look anonymous but carried with intention. The room went silent as it finished loading. She didn't need anyone to read it aloud. She understood it instantly even before the translation followed beneath it. A price. A window of time. A promise. The air left her lungs slowly. That's, for me, she said. Yes. No dramatics. No raised voices, just fact. I didn't kill anyone, she whispered. I didn't steal anything. I didn't even know who you were. That's why it works, he said, because you're clean. She laughed softly, then stopped when no one joined her. Clean, she repeated, and that makes me useful. The word tasted wrong, but it fit too well. She looked at the men around him, the way none of them met her eyes anymore, not out of disrespect, but calculation. She was no longer just a person in the room, she was a variable. How much? She asked. One of them answered before he could, voice low. Enough that someone will try. Her chest tightened. Try to what? He met her gaze then. Take you alive. That was worse. She felt it immediately, the way fear shifted shape when survival wasn't the goal anymore. She took a step back. I don't want this, she said. I never wanted this. He moved then, not toward her, but placing himself between her and the screens, as if blocking them might slow what was already moving. I know, he said, but wanting stopped being part of it the moment you stepped onto that floor. She swallowed hard. So what am I now? He didn't answer right away, and the pause told her everything. Your leverage, he said finally, against me. The truth settled into her bones. She looked down at her hands, still faintly smelling of the club, of his jacket, of a night that hadn't ended when it should have. I never asked to matter this much, she said quietly. No one contradicted her. No one could. He didn't raise his voice when he offered it. That was the part that frightened her most, not the words themselves, but how easily they came, like something he'd done before and would do again without losing sleep. I can make you vanish, he said. A new name. A new country. No digital trail. No one will ever find you. He said it like a solution, clean and efficient, like wiping a spill before it stained. She stared at him, trying to imagine a version of herself that could fit inside that sentence. A life without mirrors. A life where every introduction was a lie. She thought about the way her face had already been traded tonight, passed from phone to phone like currency. How disappearing now wouldn't feel like escape but confirmation that she was something to erase. And you? She asked. He didn't pretend not to. Understand, I stay, he said. This doesn't end because you leave. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. So I spend the rest of my life running while they keep coming for you? They'll stop, he said, eventually. Eventually sounds like a lot of funerals, she replied. His jaw tightened. That landed where it was supposed to. She took a step closer, close enough to see the faint scar at his collarbone, close enough that the room felt smaller around them. You're offering me safety, she said, but it comes with silence. It comes with survival. At the cost of being erased. He watched her carefully now, like he was learning something he hadn't expected. You don't want to disappear, he said. No, she answered immediately. I want to live. The difference hung between them. He turned away then, walking a few steps before stopping, back to her shoulders tense. If you stay, he said, there are rules. I figured. Your life will never be normal again. It already isn't. Every room you enter will change. She thought of the dance floor, the way the air had shifted when he touched her waist. I've seen that. He turned back, and they will try to break you to get to me. Her chest tightened, but she didn't look away. I'm already broken, she said. I just haven't let them use it yet. For the first time since she met him, something like surprise crossed his face, not admiration, not pity, recognition. If you stand beside me, he said slowly, you become visible. Good, she replied. I'm tired of hiding. Silence settled again, but it was different now, not heavy. This one felt like a decision being sealed. He nodded once, then he lifted his phone and made a call without stepping away from her. Prepare the front entrance, he said. Lights on, press cleared to the perimeter. Her breath caught. You're serious. You chose, he said simply. She did. He didn't touch her when they walked out together, but he didn't need to. The cameras caught them anyway. The doors opened, the night air hit her skin, and for a moment she almost faltered until she felt it. The way the city reacted to his presence, the way fear bent around him like gravity. She stood straight, shoulders back, chin up. If she was going to be seen, She would be seen standing. A phone buzzed in his hand before they reached the car. He glanced at the screen once, then held it where she could read it. The message was short. No name. No signature, just a promise. Then we'll take her in front of you. She felt the words settle deep, heavy as iron. He closed the phone slowly and looked at her, searching her face for regret. She didn't give it to him. They just made it public, she said. He nodded. So did you. And somewhere in the city, the rules changed. The city didn't explode when it started. It went quiet. That was how she knew something terrible was happening. No sirens. No shouting, just a strange pause, like the world inhaled and forgot how to breathe. She stood behind the glass wall of the upper room, watching streets she'd walked before turn unfamiliar as his people moved through them with purpose. Black cars slid into position, men stepped out without hurry, faces blank, eyes alert. This wasn't chaos, this was procedure. She finally understood the difference. He didn't pace or shout orders. He sat at the center of it all, one hand resting on the table, the other answering calls that came in rapid succession. Each one ended with a short sentence. A name. A location. A command. She realized then that his calm wasn't restraint. It was experience. The first report came quietly. They hit the west corridor. A man said, "We lost 2." She flinched. He didn't continue. Another call. Warehouse compromised. Target neutralized. She swallowed hard. This was retaliation without mercy, delivered with the efficiency of a business transaction. She watched men she'd met only hours ago leave the room and not return. She didn't ask where they were going. She already knew. What shook her wasn't the violence. It was how ordinary it was to them. She felt the weight of his protection settle heavier with every minute. This safety wasn't free. It was paid for in blood that didn't belong to her, but was being spilled because of her. A monitor flickered on, showing grainy footage from a street camera. She leaned closer before she could stop herself. The image froze on a familiar face. Her stomach dropped. That's him, she whispered. It was one of his lieutenants. A man who had stood beside him earlier, who had nodded respectfully when he spoke. The timestamp blinked, then jumped. The man was handing over a small device to someone in the shadows. He sold the route, one of the guards said quietly, for her. The words hit harder than any gunshot. She turned slowly to look at him. For me? He didn't deny it. They offered him something he wanted more than loyalty, he said. A way out. By using me. Yes. Her chest tightened, not because she felt important but because she felt responsible. She had become a bargaining chip powerful enough to crack someone close to him. That realization hollowed her out. What happens to him? She asked. He held her gaze for a long moment. He already chose. The screen went dark. She didn't need to see the rest. Hours blurred together like a fever dream. She watched dawn creep toward the windows while the city absorbed what had happened. Rumors spread faster than facts. People stayed indoors. Messages flooded in from names she didn't recognize. Some begged, some threatened, some offered alliances in exchange for her. She was no longer a person. She was a variable. At one point she pressed her palms to her face and breathed slowly, trying to remember who she had been before the dance, before the choice. He noticed. You can still leave, he said quietly. She looked at him, at the man who had ordered death with the same voice he used to offer her escape. And go where? He didn't answer because there was none. She lowered her hands. If I stay, she said, this never stops. No, people will keep dying. Yes. She nodded slowly, feeling something inside her harden into resolve or resignation. She wasn't sure which. Then loving you, she said, means accepting that. The word love hung there, raw and untested. He didn't flinch. It means becoming part of it, he corrected. And once you are, you don't get to look away. She met his eyes and understood the truth she had been circling all night. His protection wasn't just sheltered. It was a door, and once you stepped through, you didn't come back clean. The city exhaled at last, but she knew it was only between storms. By morning the music was gone, not just from the club but from the city itself. She noticed it first in the silence between distant engines and footsteps outside the safe house window. The night had burned through itself and left ash behind. No sirens. No celebration, just a quiet that felt earned and stolen at the same time. He stood at the window when the first light crept in, watching a city that had already adjusted to what he'd done. News would never say it plainly. They never did. The headlines would call it a dispute, an incident, an internal collapse, but everyone who mattered would understand. The threat was erased, not chased, not warned, erased. The men who had moved against him were gone. Their names would fade quickly, their influence dissolve like it had never existed. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing borrowed clothes that didn't feel like hers anymore. Her phone lay dark on the table. No messages. No calls. No past reaching for her. That was when she realized how complete the reset was. She hadn't just survived, she had been removed from the life she came from. Friends wouldn't look for her because they wouldn't know where. She didn't know where either. The city outside would keep breathing, but not for her. Old routines were finished, old fears replaced by something heavier. She watched him cross the room, each step unhurried, as if the night hadn't demanded anything from him. He stopped in front of her and placed a small object in her palm. A key. She looked up, confused. It opens a place outside the city, he said. No cameras. No names. For a brief fragile second hope flared. She imagined taking it, walking away, disappearing into a quiet life where no one knew the weight of his protection. Then she saw his eyes and understood what he hadn't said. That door only existed because he allowed it. And if I use it? She asked. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was softer than it had been all night. Then I lose you. The honesty hurt more than any threat. She closed her fingers around the key and felt the final choice settle. This wasn't an offer. It was a test. She stood slowly and crossed the room to him. If I go, she said, they'll still whisper your name. Yes. They'll still come for what's yours. Yes. She opened her hand and placed the key back against his chest. Then nothing changes. His jaw tightened, not in anger but in something like acceptance. He turned away and made a call that lasted less than a minute. When he ended it, the air felt different. He faced her again. It's done. She knew without asking what he meant. The last account closed, the last identity burned, the last quiet path out erased, not to punish her, but to seal the truth. She was part of his world now, whether she stood beside him or not. The sun rose fully then, casting light across the room and revealing how tired they both were. She felt it settle in her bones. This was the cost. No applause. No relief, just permanence. She walked to the window beside him and looked out at a city that would never know her name, but would feel her impact anyway. I asked you to dance because I was afraid, she said. He didn't look at her. And now? She exhaled slowly. Now I know fear was the beginning. He nodded once as if confirming a contract already signed. Below them the city moved on, unaware that a single dance had redrawn its lines. She understood it fully then. In his world, one dance isn't comfort. It's a contract, and by morning she was bound.